rec center. Even before I came to work here, I was a member, and I came on my lunch breaks to yoga, and just thinking about like what that gave me in my personal life, and then looking at from my own experience, like why did I find it so much later in life and not as a young person or in college, and looking at because probably financial barriers and probably this and probably that, and just realizing that there's these huge populations of students who don't feel welcome in these environments and who are truly missing something wonderful, that they might be able to find something like I found yoga that helps them through really dark times in their life, that might help them when they're dealing with microaggressions and racism and ableism and all these other things. And just recognizing that there's a really large group of people who we are not being welcoming to. And not, I don't think, because we are actively trying to not welcome, but because we're not addressing things, because rec and leisure has always had, not always, but in my experience, had this idea of like, we're so welcoming, anybody can just come play, and it's just not the case. So yeah, and from my lens, like the marketing and communication, just starting to look at that like from a really critical lens in the last 5 years of just seeing in one aspect of why, when marketing shows able bodies, that are thinner and more fit, and that's what's on the marketing, and that's what's on the posters, and that's who's, kind of being presented as the people who participate. That's already one barrier being created to somebody who might not fit to that visual representation. So yeah, I think it's just hugely important because of the benefits that rec and play and physical activity and wellness have for students' academic experiences, but also for us as humans, and knowing that there are a large group of people that are not getting the opportunity to engage in those benefits because of things that we're not doing as a field, I guess. Yeah.
I have an ad hoc question because it kind of came up in a different interview, and I think it's a good question to ask as well. So this is not for naming names, but if you can think about your experience and growth and just investment and engagement in general with EDI, talk about like people who have influenced you, or like what that relationship has been, right? Like who are the influencers for you in this work, and how are those people related to you? Or like who's the support, right?
There's been so many. There really hasn't been one person that like stands out among others. It's really been a group of people. I'm not like sucking up, but like you have been one. My previous supervisor has been another. And
so supervisors,
but then also people on campus. So meeting people like Corey Wong and meeting people like Angelica from the WGAC, and just having these people in my life that have helped me get to that point where I feel more comfortable talking about these things have been huge like mentors and motivators for me. Seeing like what they're doing, seeing their own experiences, seeing how they lead. I mean, like Aaron Escobedo has been a huge like mentor and influencer for me because, again, just they're people that I look at as peers in terms of like age and where they are in their professional careers, and just seeing them model doing this work that is also maybe not necessarily like in Aaron's it kind of is, but not necessarily in their job title again, but same as me, they're weaving it into like day to day. And then yeah, outside of work, just my partner, I don't know if it's like getting too personal, but yeah, my previous relationship was very kind and wonderful, but very like uncomfortable having any kind of conversations about this, and came from a really privileged place and just hadn't worked at that point through any of that, and so I didn't have a lot of conversations at home about this. It was something I did separately. So having a partner now who's so willing to have conversations and to challenge me and my own like thoughts because of some of their lived experience that's different than mine, and has been wonderful. And then surrounding myself by more supportive friends has been a huge change too. And so I know we're talking about professional setting, but really like my friend group has shifted so much as I've grown as a person, and not that I think that my previous friend groups were bad in any way. They were just focused on different things. And now I feel like I surround myself with supportive people who maybe aren't doing this work day to day, but they see and they know and they understand. They know the difference between equity and equality. They know what's, harmful about saying we're colorblind, and we have, like, again, those informal conversations happen in those spaces over a beer at a brewery. And whereas before, like, I was usually, again, like, my loving family looks at me as like the hippie who's policing everybody. I've always been looked at as the police in some other spaces. And this is normal. We talk about these things. It's good to talk about these things. So yeah, I don't know, I'm inspired by lots of people and it's funny, I don't know, it's a lot of peers. I can't really, I'm not saying that they aren't out there or that I haven't been influenced by somebody, but I can't think of anybody that is much older than me that I look up to in this work that I know personally. All of it has been people that I've seen kind of growing with me, or maybe are a few steps ahead of me in terms of just their involvement with it, but it's all peers. It's peers that I see doing the work and kind of living it and being allies and advocates, and that are just like working through their own stuff, holding space for me and for each other and for others. I'm just coming to like this realization right now. Sorry, that like I can't think of one person that's like much older than me in terms of like not older age, but like I guess in terms of like higher level on a like administrative senior position sort of thing, like career wise. I can't really think of anyone. Everybody that's coming to mind is either in positions that are similar to mine or just around mine. But yeah, I don't think I've ever had like a director or like an executive director or somebody like that I've just looked at like that's obviously in a role higher that's like, wow, you're such a mentor to me in this stuff. And yeah, like I said, I don't know if that's good or bad. That's just something I'm just suddenly realizing. It's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I get that. Okay, so those are all my planned and unplanned questions for you.
Cool.
The last one is kind of the generic, like, maybe you had thoughts about what I would ask you today based on what the way the research project was presented to you via email. So if there's something else you were hoping to get a chance to share or you'd want me to know, this is kind of the open-ended opportunity for you to do that. And it's fine if there's nothing as well, that's fine.
I can't really think of anything. The only thing I thought of like after was just like where I've gotten like training and stuff. And one place I actually have to say is like NERSA. I have found in my first year at like the conference, the national conference, I tried to go to like a lot of marketing sessions, and I felt a little like, it was not where I wanted it to be, I guess, in terms of just like how developed marketing and communications is as an area in NERSA. But my second conference that I went to, I decided I'm going to shift my focus, and I picked 3 topics that I was going to try and go, and one was like sustainability, but one was inclusion and EDI stuff. And that year was my best year at the conference. Like I felt like I gained the most in terms of like the education sessions. So that I have to say I've noticed where it was awesome that year, but there weren't a ton of options. I have noticed every year there's a little bit more, there's a little bit more, there's a little bit more. So it does seem that as an association, we're pretty supported, which is, again, different than my previous department because it also wasn't a focus of the association at all. And so I just now, like, thinking through as I was answering other questions, like, that's interesting, and maybe I hate the term, but like the trickle down effect of like if it's a priority of the association, then more of this will show up, in the individual departments. But I have found like benefit in NERSA as a whole with the EDI, like the committee that you're on that does the articles, in the NERSA Know. I read those the resources and I watch the videos and stuff, and I think they're super beneficial, and it's helped me again because I think that's an area I have to grow. is my NERSA